right. Hello, and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we finished up the option screen in the MinstrelBuff II plugin to allow a user to prioritize their anthems. We created a user interface based on how Travel Window 2 allows the user to move things up and down in a list. And we're also persisting that order out in the save file. Today, I'm going to start by doing a speed run through the Haunted Burrow, just as a celebration of the festival. Hey, Lord Zach and chat. And then we'll go on to trying to create a new window that displays the next anthem in that priority list that we don't already have as an effect. And I feel like my camera is a little off. Also, in the background, you might hear a cat who is desperate for tuna. That may be a sad cat. You do hear that. Excellent. Yes, that is Casper, and Casper is, as we say, food motivated. Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll see how effective that is. Okay, as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And in the meantime, let's get going here. So I thought it would be fun to go ahead and do a little speed run here. I've already done it on my main character, so we're going to go ahead and bring up Verzekering, who I have just for insurance purposes. He's also a minstrel. It's a bit of a joke there because Verzekering means insurance in Dutch. We're going to make sure we have that Fateful Toolkit on just so we get some extra tokens. And always remember to talk to Rosa Hornblower here before we get started. Otherwise, we're going to be very sad when you get about 8 quests in and say, huh, that's weird. What's going on here? So, normally I figure this takes me about 15 minutes to blaze on through this, and we're going to go ahead and start the timer right when we get the first quest. I normally start with Poppy, do the row over here on the, I'm going to call it the west side of town. Then we come on over, do May, do Polo's 3, go ahead and pop on back to Wrathgear here, and then finish up with Cora, who will give us the drunk effect, which I'm not particularly fond of, but does give some nice reputation and credits. So, we'll go ahead and come on over here, and where's my timer? Start, down in the bottom right. All right. We're going to go ahead and start with a stroll, and get on in there. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about all the things that Little Redhead just did, but I will point out, just like she did in passing, if you're in the attic, you can clip that dark zone to skip the bats on the way out, but you are trading off because then in, I believe, the Cobweb Wing, you are opting into the spider on your way back out. So I don't know of a way to avoid both of them. So I skipped the bats in the attic, so I am going to get hit by spiders here. If you get hit by the bats in the attic, you can avoid the spider here. Yeah, pick your poison. If you're doing a full run, doesn't really matter which, but if you're only doing the attic because you're doing the chains, then you definitely want to hit that blind spot. It's much less of a negative effect than it is the bats. Oh, this character doesn't have the big treasure chest down here. I'm going to have to hit that one of my times through the basement. Sounds like the cat was successful in getting some tuna. That's certainly to discourage that behavior next time. Alright, so that finishes off the stroll. Now we need to do it faster. We'll just do the race through there. Great. 4 minutes. Why did I think that was a 5-minute quest? Well, 4 minutes is more than enough. Does this house disable speed effects? No. If you've got a hunter who's got running speed, use it. This isn't a race against each other. This is just a race against myself. If I'm playing a Bjorning and I'm going through the haunted mansion, I am hitting whatever the Bjornings have, that dash effect, all the time. You just can't interact with some of the objects with it. But anytime you're running between objects, I'm doing it at whatever, plus 20% speed, just because why not? Bjornings are great that way. Wanderlust. I got this as Wanderlust. Thank you. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and put a little 15-second ding on my time here. Grab that chest. That's okay. Cloak of the Boar. That's new to me. What's that look like? Well, that's reminiscent of animal products. All right, cool. Words in chat. Makes an emoji. Hello. It looks like a cat. Excellent. I don't know. Can you see a cat in my background? I feel like there's a cat behind me somewhere. All right, we're done with Poppy. We're going to go on over to Hollowfast. It's the same route, but different things. This time we're going for those hidden objects. There's one right by the entrance to the attic. Get it on your way in or out, whatever is better. I normally get it on the way in because when I forget, I still have the chance to get it on the way back out. Whereas if I forget on the way back out, then it's just annoying. And I always run off for that first one before I remember, nope, that's a quest. You got to interact with it. You don't want to get too far away from it. I'll go ahead and ding this blind spot just because the bats annoy me so much. I'd rather have the spiders in the creeping, or cobwebbed wing, I should say. It's fine. This is one where, as Little Rat had said, you can do it through walls. We're going to go ahead and do the sticky cocoon here instead of, and we're going to move, and we're going to be too far away. We'll do it here instead of going through the false wall. Yeah. And then I took just too long to do it, so I got hit by that spider. Makes me a little sad. The ring as well. You can get the barrel of mystery flesh through the wall. Definitely recommended. And I haven't figured out a way to avoid falling over when I get the monocle out of the basement. It seems to be an effect that's applied when you do it. Right there. And, you know, hop back up as soon as you can, but I don't have a good way to avoid it. Out! Let's see. Zach says, chat. Well, hang on a sec. I gotta interact with an NPC. Finish. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and do the alternate path, the drinks now. It's nice and easy. And interact with wall items. Yeah. I use delete to select things. And I also use F10 or Shift F10 to select NPCs, which we'll get up to when we're talking to Hobbits. If you can, try to be next to the table when you get hit by the spider so that you can still interact with the potion while you're falling over from the spider. And if you can stop just short of the table, even better, because then you can get the immunity to the spider and run right through it. Obviously, I'm a little distracted right now, so not exactly my A game as far as running down through here. Lord Zach is asking about Shift F10 for light. I thought the light was F11, but I could be mistaken on that. Alt F10, says Arthur. Thank you. That's one where, because it's a semi-hidden feature, I just have to go find it. And usually it's just when I'm in Moria, and I can really use that light. And maybe eventually in Gundabad, I hear there's some underground spaces where I just have to go look it up. And then I remember it for about as long as I'm in that space, and then I just forget about it again. I think it's a neat feature, but it's such a undiscoverable feature that it is a little weird. All right, let's go ahead and do those hobbits. Hobbits you do have to interact with. I just do the same route as before. You could go in different ways, but because they're in most of the same places, except for I think there's a cat on the stove. It's beeping. Except for whichever wing, whose name I can't remember. Creeping wing. Yeah, and there are rebindable options for, select the next NPC, select previous NPC, select closest NPC, and the same for items. And I highly recommend having at least select closest NPC and item and next NPC and item. And, bind the previous one if you are feeling a little adventuresome, I guess. This is the one that doesn't have one. Just boot on out of here. And basement. Now, this one is close enough where if you wanted to, and for some reason we're ducking into here, you can select them through the wall. But it doesn't really save you any time because you still have to interact with these crates. You might as well just run around the corner. But the barrel, for scaring them, is interactable from this side. And so we are going to take advantage of that to just shave a second or two off of doing that U-turn. Okay, and here, got to go ahead and go into the west wing. All right, do a little walk, do a little talk, get on out of here. And then selecting the Hobbit through the wall, I will go ahead and do that for this last Hobbit. No reason to run into that dead end. Just take some extra seconds, unneeded. And we're out. Now, the thing where I lose the most time on my quote-unquote speed run is Polo's first quest here, the rattling in the attic, because I'm so used to coming out of the attic and immediately running into the creeping wing, which is just the worst thing to do when you don't have to go through the entire Haunted Burrow. It's the kind of thing where I'll just give up and like return to personal housing rather than run through the whole thing because I just can't take it. All right, say hi to the Hobbit. Get out of here. So, with the rattling, gotta remember, take a left. Do not go into that door. Save yourself so much angst. All right. Hey, Casper. Okay, so we're going to come on in. Now we can disregard the previous advice. We do want to go further on in. But this is just like Little Red had said. After you do the Roaring Maw, that's probably the best time. Since this is a very fast run, you're only going to get one uses of this free exit the Haunted Burrow. This is the time to do it. Because you're going after the Cobweb Wing, you still have to go through the Creeping Wing and the basement. And it just... it's just enough of a slog to do it that this is where you want to bypass that walk on out. So, go ahead, interact with the Hobbit Bear, and run that exit the Haunted Burrow ability. Sometimes I'll be halfway to the exit and remember, no, I don't have to, but I'm on it for this one. And just as Little Red had said, we're going to go ahead and skip straight to the Creeping Wing using the secondary entrance on the right here. Second porthole to the right, straight on to... Ow, and then it was already open. So that's the danger of it being opened. I instinctively click it to interact with it, and it closes, and you have to wait out the whole time. It's very sad. Hey, Rosenblum.
We could group up if you want to trip out.
Yeah, I think so.
I could take you to the hill.
Alright, it was only a Hobbit playing a silly prank. Let's get out of here. So, we're coming up on the last of the normal 8 quests, and the last 2 are the In League and Ale Association, or In Association and Ale League, depending on how you like it. Canesius in chat says, hi, hello in chat. We're doing a quick speed run before we get over into the plugins, just because it's harvest math. All right, so that was 8. If you have Ale League and Ale Association and In League unlocked, go ahead and pop those 2 for your final 2. You get all 10 of your daily quests done right here in the Haunted Burrow. That is my preference. There's so many other things to do, but if I just want to dip in and dip out for that sweet, sweet legendary item experience, for instance, which we're on box 98. It's getting close. Get that darkness. And out. Okay. Cobweb Wing, again, if you skip the bats, you are going to hit that spider on the way out. There's no real avoiding it. It's one or the other, as far as I can tell. If anyone has a bypass with this spider, that'd be great, because it really does throw a wrench into my metaphorical works. But we're on the way out. Remember, you can skip the Creeping Wing entirely. There's no hobbits to be scared down there, so just run straight for the exit and get on into the basement. I'm seeing some German in chat. Oops. So again, we're going to go ahead and reach through the wall, trigger that bucket of tricks, so we don't have to deal with the U-turn. I'm afraid I speak a little Dutch, and I speak almost no German. So hello, something about a day, and that's about all I've got with my distracted self.
How was your day?
How was my day? Oh, my day was great. Yesterday we had some exams for our Dutch language class, and today has been a little bit of preparing for tomorrow's exams and for streaming, and work and such. All right, so we did another wall trick there. Don't need to run down that dead end wall, corridor, and the last one. I saved this one for last because it does put a drunk effect on you. It's a 5-minute effect. It does not tick down while you're on, while you are offline, which is frustrating. It might actually reset when the servers reset. It might not be persisted for that. But if you're just offline, it doesn't tick on down. I use the Bilbo's wine that's right here next to the West Wing. I think there's other wines available, I have been told, but this one just works for me. I know where it is. It's easy to get to. And you only have one darkness effect to run through on your way back. Or you're on your way in, as the case may be. Okay. So that is a speed run for the Burrow, quote-unquote speed run. And we have 13 minutes, 28 seconds. I don't know if I'm going to count the time for actually talking to Rosa here. So I'll stop the timer there and come on over here and get both the reward for finishing the wrapper and also the Bountiful Harvest intro. What does this thing say? Wallet barter tokens. I really feel like Figments of Splendor are wallet barter tokens, landscape. It did not give me extra ones. I should make a note of that.
No.
Fateful Toolkit did not give bonus Figments of Splendor. Feels like an oversight. I mean, it really doesn't. That seems like a legitimate thing that they would exclude, but it's not what it says it does, by golly. All right, so now we've got Verzekering. She's well and truly plastered for another 3 minutes and 41 seconds. So cool. When I run that, including picking up the quest and dropping it off, logging in, logging out, it's a healthy 15 minutes, right? And you're doing nothing but this. So, like, you can be watching YouTube or Netflix, but you can't really be doing anything else like going to the kitchen or whatever. So, yeah, I tend to think of, if I want to do 4 characters through this festival, that's an hour of gameplay. And it's not without its merit. I have gotten my legendary item reward track up to level box 98 here, rapidly closing in on 100, because I do have an interest in that legendary coffer of the painted steed, and that'll be neat to get. And so each character that I run through on here is at least a quarter of a box, maybe more like a third of a box, and so it feels like a useful alternative to any other method of legendary item experience acquisition, especially here on Treebeard, where we have high level content of level 65 stuff, and when we're actually playing with our mains, we're getting a lot of legendary item experience, but the rest of the week we're busy with other stuff. So this is, for 15 minutes I can go in there, I can make solid progress on legendary item reward track. Now, Zach says Figment things aren't festival tokens. It doesn't say festival tokens, it says wallet barter tokens, festival and landscape. And you get Figments from landscape play. So I would say if you get the token on landscape, as you get these Figments of Splendor, then it counts as a landscape token. But that may be an overly generous view of what a landscape token is. But in my view, if you are not in an instance when you get the reward and it goes into your wallet, it is a wallet landscape token. And I suspect SSG has a different, somewhat overlapping view of what a landscape barter token is. Yes, as Little Redhead says, I think they're already being pretty generous. It's the lack of specificity that gets me, not the lack of the extra stuff, right? I'd be fine if it said, add little asterisk and you can dig into the game somewhere and say, here's the things that don't count. That's fine, right? Like, if they're going to exclude stuff, I just want to know what it is somehow. Like, if there's a web page someplace, I can go look. But, if they say all festival and all landscape barter tokens, you get that at level 10 from these festivals. It's not a good to bad barter token. But mostly that's me being silly. A little bit me wanting them to be a little bit more precise in their language. But for every person like myself, who likes them being precise in their language, I'm sure there's an equal number or greater number of people who find over specificity to be an annoyance and not a benefit. such is the way of communication. Okay, so we are sitting looking at my backup minstrel, one of my 2 backup minstrels, and while we're looking at non-plugin stuff, I have Verzakering here because festival quests can give legendary item experience, but the minimum level you have to be at for those in general is level 51, even though you can start getting legendary item experience at level 45. So I have one character, Turtle at level 45, for the consumption of legendary item heritage runes, because you get the most bang for your buck if you consume the rune at the level it's unlocked. And I have a second character, Turtlestone, at level 51, because again, that's the level you get legendary item experience, and you do get more proportionality increase to your legendary item reward track if you complete the same quest at level 51 than you do level 65. It's not a lot, but it's noticeable, right? It's if you have the character, why not do it? But if you have other characters you're actually playing, those are the ones you wanna go ahead and do. This is the backup to the backup. Maybe the other one is. This one's level 51 after all. So yes, that's why I have a couple extra characters here over on Treebeard, where I can be a little silly and have some extra characters just sitting around like that. But my main is level 65, and I don't know if there's much of a reason to switch on over. This character is a minstrel. Let's go ahead and maybe come a little further away from all the action while we start looking at plugins and stop looking at the Haunted Burrow. Oh, we'll look at it in the distance. There we go. Look down on the people from on high. Okay, so go ahead and cover up my character portrait there. So we have the MinstrelBuff II plugin. We've been looking at this. Let's go ahead and move the 3 windows that you get. The main MinstrelBuff window. You also get the melodic interlude window and the soliloquy tracker window. We're just going to move all those over. And in the options, make it a little bit bigger, we're going to go ahead and blow up the size of the main window to maybe a 2x. Make it a little bit easier for everyone to see. And we'll just pop it on down here below the radar. Okay, and you know what, that timer is still showing. I'm going to go ahead and just hide that. I think we're done with it. That was a good silliness. Okay. Chat. Yeah, Agartha and Lord Zach, it's the devil's in the details as far as what counts as a token. Little Redhead, yep, Agartha. Yes, man, if only you could log multiple characters from the same account on. I could have like 3 minstrels all going together. I think it would be very weird. Lord Zach has a level 105 minstrel, still waiting on someone to teach me and Minnie. For me, minstrels are, you know what? I just feel uncomfortable in this character. I'm going to go ahead and switch. Well, I'm musing on what you say. Okay. Okay. I've got this character set up the way I like it. So, minstrels definitely have a feel of sort of a give and take for me. You do a ballad, you do something else. You do a ballad, you do something else. Hey, I'm up high. Not as high as I want to be, but let's get on up this hill. Sweet. Okay. It's like we never left. So minstrels have this sort of give and take, this ebb and flow, this call and response feeling, where, especially if you're in a red line, if you're doing damage, you're going to do a minor ballad distance, and then you're going to do something else, and then you're going to do a minor ballad distance, and then you're going to do something else. So you keep on doing a ballad and something else, a ballad and something else. And you do that for a couple reasons. One, it's cool, why not? But more specifically, every time you do a minor ballad, you're going to pop up an effect from Redline Minstrels, and that effect comes from the war speech effect that procs from discordant ballads. So it gives you an 8-second buff. So you do that, you do something else, you do that, you do something else. And when you get into that rhythm, you always have this plus 15% tactical damage rolling buff that happens. And if you get out of that, if you stop to do something else, those go away very quickly. It's only 8 seconds in total, and then you just have to sort of stack those back up. So when you are in the midst of things, you've got a 15% tactical buff coming from War Speech, proccing off of Discordant Ballads, and that's a reason to be going back and forth between ballad and other things. The other one is that, what's our ability that does this? There is an ability that says, there we go, haste, that says your ballads will reduce the cooldown. Oh, yes, it is showing up. Okay. Your ballads will reduce the active cooldowns of cries and calls. So cries and calls tend to be your big hitters, things that are area effect or are hitting for lots of damage, and they also tend to have longer cooldowns. Cry of Wizards has a 30-second cooldown. It's great. It's the best. I would fire it off non-stop if I could. I can't. So a ballad, mixing and matching ballads and other things means these cooldowns are constantly getting 1 second shorter. And in the time it takes to do 3 ballads, around 8 seconds, 3 ballads and 3 other things around 8 seconds, you've passed 16 seconds of cooldown time. Now there's other ways to get those cooldowns reset, especially if you have lots more trait points than I do. But that's a big thing, is doing that ebb and throw between ballads and not ballads, ballads and not ballads, helps you maximize your damage and also get access to these longer cooldown skills more frequently. Which also helps maximize your damage, because if you're doing a short fight, like you find an orc in the wild and you want to defeat it, no biggie. Like you can blow all your big cooldown skills and then it falls over and you run on to the next thing. But if you're in a protracted battle, like in an instance or with a roving threat or something, then you're going to want those longer cooldown skills to come back as soon as possible. Anyway, that's Minstrels in a nutshell. Just ebb and flowing back and forth between ballads and not ballads. And we have the complication of anthems now that are a little bit more complicated now than they were in Minstrel 2.0. But that's what we're going to try and work on today, is making them simpler. All right. So, coming back in to the plugin manager, we're going to come into MinstrelBuff II, load that up, and actually do the exact same thing that we just did. When it first starts, you've got your windows, your MinstrelBuff window, your soliloquy tracker, and your melodic enter. Not going to bother about those other ones, but for the main window, we're going to go ahead and scale that sucker up, make it a little bit easier to see. Oh, why not? 2.0, that's good. Okay, so we have set up in the UI an Anthem priority, and that's what we were focusing on last time. And now we have the ability to reorder these anthems so that we can specify the idea that if I do not have Anthem 2 Dissonance active, then that's the thing I want to have active. If I don't have Anthem 3 War active, that's the thing I want active, and so on. So we do want to keep in mind a couple things. One, not every minstrel is going to have access to all of these skills, so we want to maybe pay attention to which ones are trained. Now that gets complicated because if you switch trait trees, then you are going to need to kind of reassess which one of these are trained. And potentially, as a Hobbit's leveling up and gets access to new traits and they spend them, that's an area I haven't really dug into very much. But it might be possible to say, hey game, please tell me if this skill becomes available. So we're going to have to look into that as well as an edge case. That's the idea. If I don't have the effect associated with Anthem 2 Dissonance, I want that one to be next. If I don't have the effect associated with Anthem 2 War, I want that to be next. And because of the combination of the effects that goes on between Anthem 1, lesser and greater, Anthem 2, lesser and greater, Anthem 3, lesser and greater, a combined one counts for both of these. And so if I have the combined one for Dissonance and War, move on to the next thing that I have trained, and see what's up. Okay, so to make life easier on ourselves right now, we're going to ignore the fact that we don't have these trained, and go ahead and say, what's that third thing I have? Anthem 3 Composure. We're going to go ahead and move that up, and then the rest of these, they might show up, but I will never be able to use them. So right now, these are the 3 in the order that I want. Okay. Let's go ahead and think about what that means. So, as we do most times, let's go ahead and pop open our source control. In this case, I'm using the fork available at fork.dev. I'm not a sponsored thing or anything, I just like their tool. And it is wrapping around a Git repository. What unchanged things do we have? We have a D tracker thing. That's funny. Oh, that's fine. Added to do for D tracker. All right. So, Fairland had an excellent idea of, which we're not going to get to right now, so it's in the to-do file as an idea for later. This select theme list could probably just be a combo box drop-down style of UI. It was interesting to have it as a list when that was pretty much the only option, visible in combat and select theme, but now we have a bunch of other things in here, and the Anthem priority probably feels right as a list or something like it, but the theme selection, maybe that could be a drop-down instead. So that was an interesting idea. And then in the option window, we have our good old show debug options equals true. So added the to-do item. So let's go ahead and push out those changes, and now we have a clean working directory to get started in. So the first thing we need to think about is, what is this going to look like? MinstrelBuff already has 3 windows. We have the main buff window, which is what we see magnified up here. We also have the melodic interlude window that just pops into existence when you can do a friendly target heal in red mode. And we have the soliloquy of spirit tracker for when you're healing people with that heal over time ability. So, do we need a 4th window? Feels a little silly. Feels like instead we could incorporate it into the main buff window. And I had some thoughts about that, as I am wont to do, and I don't have a good answer for that, but I do know we generally have a fair amount of space to the right of this window. We can't see it so well when the window is scaled up, but if we have the window scaled at 1x, we can see in order to support expanding the window out to up to 6 anthems, although now only up to 4 is possible, of Anthem effects. Technically 5 if you include the personal Anthem effect of distance or the other one. But we have all this extra space right here. And so we could incorporate it within this UI and just make it visible or not based on that. So I think that's a good start. It saves us, A, from having to deal with a new window. Buff window already cares about the addition and subtraction of Anthem, so it seems like a logical place for us to put the logic that we want to have regarding this Anthem. And it saves us from having to create a window and having settings about where is that window and how to move it and how to scale it and all that. We get all that for free if we just use this here. And so we're going to start with that, and if we ever need to break it into its own window, we can do that. But we're going to save ourselves all that work until, just in time kind of thing. Just do it when we need it. Don't pre-do it just in case. So we're going to go ahead and do that in buff window and save ourselves from having to drag around 4 windows when we first log in on a fresh character. Okay, that being said, I'm going to rescale this up to 2x for a visibility perspective. And we're going to move it over here on the right because I expect we're going to have some other windows in front of it. Okay, so we're all done in source control right now. We have a clean working directory, so anything we do, easy to undo. Oh, there we go. So we have a clean working directory. Anything we want to do, easy to do. Okay. Lord Zach says, before the shadow. I haven't looked at that yet. Is it like going back in time? Well, that's an interesting question. I have a general philosophy for Lord of the Rings Online, which is that space travel is time travel. When you travel to the location of Breetown, you have traveled in time to when Gandalf is just about to leave and Aragorn has just left, right? When you travel to Rivendell, you travel in space there, but you also travel in time to when the Fellowship is just about to depart. When you travel to Lothlorien, you have traveled in space, but also to the time that the Fellowship is there. So all space travel in Lord of the Rings Online is also time travel. You're just traveling back and forth through the story. Oh wait, did I ever tell you about that time when I did this thing? You know, it's a glorious style of storytelling. We're very fluid with when things are. That being said, Before the Shadow specifically follows narratively the time period where Boromir was traveling from Gondor up to Rivendell, and specifically the time after passing the Gap of Rohan. And so it's going to fill in map-wise, in Eriador, a couple of new spaces to the southwest of the Lonelands, to the west of Arathian and Endervaith, over between the Brandywine River and the River Gwythe. Boy, the cat did not like that noise. All right, THs, not good for Casper. Sorry about that, Casper. Yeah. Okay. I guess it sounded too much like a cat hissing. And so, time-wise, we are pre the council at Rivendell. And, of course, if you're going book-wise, there's a long time between Frodo setting out to leave the Shire and Frodo actually setting out in the Shire. And in the game, we pop in, to the end of that 20 years when Frodo has set off. And so... I don't recall the exact time of how long it takes Boromir to make the trek, especially after he loses his horse on the way, but months before the Council of Rivendell kind of thing, but not decades, is my understanding. So, don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully it does. Sorry about that, Casper. Yeah. All right, prolonged THs sound like an angry cat. Good to know. There's some actually really good articles over on LOTRO.com that talk a little bit more about Before the Shadow. If you come on over here, don't forget your free questing coupon, of course. Extra Life is on, Harvest Festival, Show Me Other Things, there we go. So, Before the Shadow, Swan Fleet, and I want to say there was another one for the other region around here somewhere. I don't know, are these tagged? Can I travel between them? I don't see a tagging system. Anyway, if we search for Before, we have Before the Shadow Swanfleet, and that's all on the front page. But if they've done one about the other Cardalon, it's either on here or it will be coming soon. I expect Before the Shadows is going to hit the Bulwer for some final testing by the wider community in the near future. They, of course, are doing internal tests and alpha tests over on Palantir. But the wider community is going to get access to some of that in the, I would guess, near future. The expected release date is going to be early December, I believe. And so November is going to be an exciting time. Fortunately, there's nothing else major happening in November. Okay, so let's go ahead. Thank you for the question, Lord Zach. Hopefully that was a useful set of rambling. So we're going to go ahead and come back into our MinstrelBuff II file, which is just almost unmanageable at this point. But we do have a Minstrel 3.0 thoughts. So what we're working on is this UI that shows the next Anthem in your priority queue. If the Anthem cooldown time is detectable, use it, and options view. So, look at the themes list for the selected item being different color. Cool, did that. Replace the... Oh, we've actually done a lot of this. Oh, adding the icon to the left of the Anthem name. Still want to do that. Icon and label under control. Yep, we've done that. well, we've done the control, and add move up, move down buttons. So we've actually done a fair amount of that. The icon to the left of the Anthem, I thought that was an interesting idea. What would that look like? Let's just take a look. Lord Zach, yes. Before the Shadow features questing from levels 1 to 32. Yes, it is, besides narratively increasing the scope of the world of LOTRO, does provide an alternate leveling path for characters. So first of all, there is a new intro that you'll follow, and you'll select that during character creation in the character creation screen. So if you want to see that specific intro, you will need to click that before you enter the world for the first time, and you'll get directed to the right intro. Before the Shadow, or classic, I suppose. I don't know how they'll refer to that. And then beyond the intro, just like normal, my understanding is all characters will have access to the post-intro content, just like we as a Hobbit could go over to the dwarf area and do the prologue section of that for dwarves and elves and humans as well. So for the completionist, it means a whole bunch of new stuff to do with whatever level character is your completionist character. But you won't be able to go back and do that intro that would have been instead of the intro you did do with your character. So just like your completionist character can't ever do the intro for another race, same deal. But the rest of it is accessible. Okay, cool. I have distracted myself with the idea of those icons. So, let's see. If I were to come into my reference and say, what is the Anthem? What's our Anthem 1? Resonance. Okay, so let's start making some documentation for us. This is all happening in options. Cool. Options window. So let's make, do we have an icon? No, it'll be fine. Okay, so let's make ourselves a little thing here. It'll be Anthem, well, skill icons equals that. Let's actually pull that into settings for right now, just because conceptually it'll make my head better. Okay, so we have an Anthem 1 lesser equals, and we're going to go ahead and pull something in. Now, you can do these as either decimal or as hexadecimal, base 10 or base 16. But for my money, base 16 is just so much better. So we're going to go ahead and do it in base 16. Now, if you, like me, can't do this conversion in your head, that's okay. Pull open your trusty calculator, put it into programmer mode, and just pop in the decimal, click on hex, copy it back out. And just remember to prefix it with a 0x. Yeah, there are memes about Denethor's feelings towards Boromir and the other one. Yes, Boromir and his friend. Okay, so we have Anthem 1 Lesser Resonance. That's the skill icon there. Anthem 1 Greater Compassion is... Excellent question. Greater Anthem 1. That in decimal is this one. And so same thing, just click back to decimal mode, paste it in, come back into hex, and copy it back out. Now, this is a great time to think about some judicious use of white space to do some vertical alignment. And right away we can see, and this was pretty noticeable in decimal as well, these skill icons are pretty adjacent. They start with a 4, that's a very good sign for skill icons, but they end in 06 and 05. So they are conceptually, were probably released in the same update, were added about the same time, little clues like that. Okay, so we have those two. Let's go ahead and grab lesser dissonance equals. For that is lesser Anthem 2 dissonance. And we're going to go ahead and bring in that skill ID. Again, just a little conversion. And a little white space. And we can see we've jumped up from 5 to 10 here, but we're still very close number-wise. All right, let's throw in the greater. So we're looking for greater Anthem 2 War with an icon ID of this. So hexadecimal, decimal, paste, hexadecimal, copy, and we're back to 8. A little backtracking there. Awesome. Epic Cougar says hello. Hello, welcome to chat. We're doing hexadecimal to decimal conversions. Excellent. All right, so that's the icon ID for Greater War. That's coming in for Lesser Composure. So that is an Lesser Anthem 3 in my lookup table here. It's good to have these things available off to the side here. And the reason I'm pasting in the value, whoops, switch to decimal first, otherwise your number gets really big, is that sometimes you have one of the numbers, sometimes you have the other number, and it is very handy to just be able to do a global search for the one and find the thing you're looking for. So while I want in code to express it as hexadecimal because I like that, in some of the places where you'll find this information online, you're going to find it in its decimal format. And so I'm keeping them both because I have them both right now, and it's just easier that way. In my mind, they should always be expressed as hexadecimal, but that's just not the way it's doing. Epic Cougar, well, you're welcome to stay around, but I don't want to cause you a headache. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do these last two here. We have a Greater Anthem 3. So we have a Greater Anthem 3, and that is this icon ID here. And coming in to decimal mode, paste it in, hexadecimal mode, grab it back out. Remember to prefix it with the 0x, and we're good. And we can see we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, you know, guesses on what the Anthem of the Free People is going to be. Given that that was an existing anthem, though, makes you wonder. All right, so we have a number. It is super different. So come on in. Remember to switch to decimal mode first to grab that hexadecimal value. And there we go. Yeah, super different. We can see that they did not bother to introduce a new skill image. They probably just reused the existing Anthem of the Free Peoples from way back when. Yeah, Lord Zach has mentioned in Lua 5.x, this is 5.1, or a subset of it. You can use the string format function to convert integers to hexadecimal. So if you're trying to dump out information in a plugin, you can absolutely take a thing in memory that is an integer, and that's what this is. In memory, this is stored as an integer, just like this is, and you can spit it out in a way. So if you want to spit out these numbers from your plugin to the standard output, you can absolutely do it as an integer or as a hexadecimal, or presumably other bases. Yes, Epic Cougar, I appreciate that this is not something everyone wants to do, but I am happy to share. Okay, so we have our 7 image IDs, and that means we can go ahead and make an image from these IDs. Now, do I remember how to do that? I don't know. But we can certainly give it a try. One thing that we'll want to know is that these are probably all 32 by 32 images because they're skill IDs, and that just tends to be the way of it right now, pre any sort of a visual upgrade. So when we go ahead and add in this list, and I don't know, where is that? Anthem. Oh, that's in the options window. Anthem. In this here, all right, we have anthems for priority selection. Great. So we're getting the thing, whoops. We're getting the thing out in localized anthem name. I'm forgetting all the things I've done here. Yeah, that's... Is that fine? One of these days, I need to... Epic Cougar says, question, is this plugin on Plugin Compendium yet? It is. For anyone who doesn't know, Plugin Compendium is a great tool built by Lunar Water and allows you to pretty effortlessly install and update plugins. So for instance, we can see MinstrelBuff II is... Well, that's funny. Why are you saying it needs an upgrade? I'll have to look into that. So you can easily add new plugins, but as we can see, MinstrelBuff II is in there. If you do a search, you'll still see the old MinstrelBuff. You can install that, but without some updates, it does not work with the new Anthem system entirely. It does a little bit for French and German because some of those skill names haven't been localized yet, but some of them have, or at least there are some new ones, and so it doesn't really. No one writes a plugin from scratch. Even the first independent plugin authors use the sample plugins as a basis. Yeah, I do a lot of, well, it works over here. What did they do? Kind of development, which, you know, it does not need to spring fully formed from your forehead. Cool. Steady Eddie, great to see you live. I've been recently having a lot of fun with Lua in Medieval 2 Total War. Oh, neat. Has there been any recent interesting developments, new libraries, or functionalities? So, on the LOTRO front, Lua has been what I would call incredibly stable and unperturbed for a while. So there's been minor adjustments when they bring out a new class like Brawler. There are some minor tweaks to the API to support that. But in general, the same people, I think, who would give love, care, and attention to the Lua infrastructure in LOTRO are consumed doing other things like battling lag issues and possibly restoring access to decommissioned servers and whatnot. So on the grand scheme of things, I hope it happens eventually, but I don't think it's on their priority list right now. And the short version, as Egg Arthur has said, is there are currently no plans. But I hope that in the medium to long term there become those plans, but you know, that's me having hope springing eternal. Okay, so I was just thinking that internally we're not referring to these things in a generic way. We're not doing it in a way that I like, and it's fine. Oh, that's neat. Ideally, I would like these anthems to have like an internal ID, like anthem number 7, and then we do stuff. Yeah. Oh well. Lord Zach, I myself work as a software developer, and speed and API isn't the top priorities, unfortunately. They just want more features all the time. Yeah, I can see that. Long ago, in one of my courseworks, I was introduced to sort of a common priority list, a hopeful priority list, and maintainability was kind of high up there. But yeah, adding features to an API system is just lower than some of the other things on their list. All right, we'll come back to this idea later. In the meantime, this is fine. And we're going to go ahead, and we have the localized anthem name, and we can go ahead and use that to get the icon that we want. So local skill icon equals, still icon, yeah, equals, and this is going to be a basic Turbine UI control. That's kind of the simplest thing that you can pop onto the screen. And we want to go ahead, and first thing we do always is skill icon set parent. First thing I always want to do is set the parent, and that is going to be the list item row. And the second thing we want to do is set the background. Epic Cougar says, I was looking at my plugins and I see Turbine in it. Wonder if I deleted it, if it would mess with anything. So yes, this is part of the stability I was mentioning. When the API, the LOTRO API came out, it was the company was called Turbine at the time. And so if you go into the API documentation, everything starts in the namespace Turbine. Turbine, we have turbine.gameplay, we have turbine.gameplay attributes, turbine.ui, turbine.ui.lotro. And so when I pop a window up on the screen that has this blue button at the top and the X in the corner and all of that, that's a turbine.ui.lotro.window. And you have a choice when you are a company like Turbine, now SSG, is you can go into your API and rename everything, breaking every plugin in existence, or you just leave it and just accept the fact that people are going to be seeing Turbine and it's fine. Turbine's a pretty innocuous name. And so that's what they did. They just left it. All existing plugins still work, even if they're 20 years old. That is not a specific, 15 years old. That is not a specific problem that breaks a plugin. There might be other newer developments that do, but you can bring in a plugin from pre-SSG days, and it'll still work because the namespaces haven't changed. And so you're going to see a Turbine folder. For instance, if you go into, if I go into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, there's a plugins folder, and there is a Turbine folder, and it contains files that can be optionally referenced by plugins. One of the most common ones is the class.lua, and if you do not have this folder in place, then some plugins will not work. Many plugins, and I should probably start doing this myself, but many plugins will copy the files they need out of Turbine and host them in their own plugin folder. So for instance, MinstrelBuff does this. It has class.lua. I'm a little curious. Is that the same exact file? Yes, almost. What's different? Interesting. Okay, so there's a second file called type that they also pulled in. And so, cool. Is that the same? Plugins, keep plugins, MinstrelBuff II. This predates me pulling it over from Melida. And there's one in here. So class imports this imports class. That's delightful. I hope the importer breaks recursion. So in order to solve that problem of what if that Turbine directory is missing, MinstrelBuff just self-hosts the class and the type files. Now, in a more active development environment, you run the risk of not picking up updates to class or type that are put out, but because of the rampant stability of the Lua API, that's not an issue right now. And so, yeah, if you don't have that Turbine directory, some things will not load. In fact, we can go ahead and simulate that. If I come into here, and I go ahead and just rename this to turbine.bask, and I come into dtracker and try to load it, it does not load because it is looking for that class. We weren't able to load the class. Oops. So come back in, restore those files to what they were, and come on in, and dtracker can load. And if dtracker self-hosted that class file, and apparently type, that would not be a problem, right? We could say we're going to work even if you don't have the Turbine directory. You could do it either way. Cool. Gonna unload that, reload this. So excellent question. So at Arthur, where I work, we have names from 5 companies ago. Yeah, it's a common thing in code bases to reference the name of the company, especially if you're using Java-style package naming where you have the company or the originating organization embedded in these things, which is just a really funny idea given how often companies change names or are acquired or whatever. And you're like, okay, yeah, spread across this code base. Now, you can just sort of track when this code was first created based on the namespaces involved. Was that a good idea? Whatever. As long as your company doesn't mind, it's fine. But if you're spending active money going back and cleaning all those up, is that worth it? Oh, I don't know. I'd hate to be the one who had to make that choice. Be like, okay, we're definitely spending however many developer hours not only making the change, but then hunting down every bug caused by the change being done just not quite perfectly. And who signs off on that? And so you just don't do anything. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set that background. So skill icon, set background, and we need an image. So let's come on into that documentation, turbine.ui.control. Epic Cougar, I didn't realize they didn't update it to SSG. I'm glad I didn't delete it. Yeah, you can always re-download it. It's available on the LOTRO interface site. So you can always go to lotrointerface.com, and if you search for Turbine, you will come up with the Turbine classes and examples. You can download these. It has that Turbine folder in there. So it's not lost forever. It's just lost until you replace it, or until you use LOTRO Companion to download a plugin that specifies it as a dependence. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set background image, path or ID of the image to set the background of the control to. Great, let's try the ID, in which case we want the skill icons, and we're going to pass in the localized Anthem name, and we're going to call it good. Now, we do want to shove the label on over then, so we're going to go ahead and say list item label, and we're going to set that position, well, really set the left. And we're going to set it over by, let's just say 35 pixels. Give a little bit of a buffer. In fact, let's do 36 pixels. Let's be a little wild. And skill icon set left, we're going to go ahead and do like 2 pixels. Get it a little bit further away from the left there. And maybe that's it. Let's go ahead and unload and reload and options. And, well, we definitely moved stuff over, but the image didn't come on through. So now we have to sort of remind ourselves, what did we do? What's wrong with this? And so on. So I've definitely done a set background call over in DTracker. So if I come on into the, let's see, images, and we have, say, options normal. Let's see how this is used. Great. So we have a set background. Awesome. There's a set blend mode. Cargo code programming though it might be. Let's go ahead and hoist that up and see if that's useful. It was not. Well, it's worth a try. So we are setting background to the result of this is a number. Over here, we were also setting background, and we were doing that to something that was also a number. Yes, thank you. Or at least should be. So let's double check. We did not set these up to be table key values properly. That could be a thing. Okay. So unload, reload. There we go. Okay, now we can see we forgot to set the size of the skill icon, and the default behavior for setting a background that is smaller than your control is to just tile that image. Why not? Looks great. So we want to come in and go ahead and set the size of that skill icon to be the size of the expected image. So set size, and we're going to go ahead and take a stab that that's probably 32 by 32, and bring it back up, and that's great. So for me, that says a lot more than just the name. I don't necessarily remember which one's distance or which one's war, but I know the war is the stabby one. And we still get the icons moving around because we're moving whole rows. Awesome. I actually really like how that looks. And we're not getting much of a border on top of the icon, and I would like to. So a thing that I'll sometimes do just to get a sense of what's going on is take a little snip and put it into MS Paint, where it's just really easy to blow this up and do some basic pixel manipulation. So we have 3 pixels down here. We have 3 pixels down here. Oops. So I'd very much like to have a 4th pixel so that we can then have a 2 pixel above it. So first of all, instead of setting left, let's go ahead and say set position 2, 2. And the row it's in, let's go ahead and set the Anthem row height to 36. I thought 35 might be a mistake. We'll see. Come on in. There we go. Now each of these has a little bit more of a border around it. Let's see how we like that up close. So paste it back in. Then we can see, oh, that's actually 4 pixels might be more than I wanted. I know, it's a nitpicky kind of thing. All right. Final change, and then we're going to go on to something more productive. So we're going to go ahead and set the position to 1 pixel down. We're going to do this to be 34 pixels tall. Squeeze those a little bit together, and bam, lovely. Okay, so all done. Ship it. So let's see. Lord Zach, if it works, don't touch it. Yeah, for namespaces, that'd be cool. It'll say tour band for 20 more years. Discussions of offline play. I don't know. I don't know what this game would look like if it supported offline play. Okay, so we have fixed some stuff. Let's come on into our source control and take a look at what those changes were. How is that on the image? It is good. Oh, in case you weren't here before, what I've got going above my head there in chat, Little Redhead is specifically trying to raise money for Extra Life, which raises money for children's hospitals. So if you would like to donate money for children's hospitals and would specifically like to support Little Redhead's support effort in doing it, there is a link in chat for you to do that. Okay. Where are we? Okay, so added. Oh, and that was actually a to-do item. So let's go ahead and mark that off, and then we're really pretty much done with the options part of things. So add icon left anthem name. Done. Okay, so we finished off the options, including that, and options window added skill icon to left of skill name. Okay. And that's going to be this change from 35 down to 34. And the adding of a control, which did just the bare minimum. We set the parent, we set the size, we set the position, and we set the background image. And we went ahead and bumped the label over to accommodate room for it. Stage. And we're going to go ahead and just commit that, and we're back to a... whoops. All right, well, we could either roll back that commit since we only have it locally, or we could just say skill icons needed for previous commit. Do the lazy approach and do it in 2 different commits. Done. Okay, so Git is a distributed source control system, which specifically means that there's no central authority, usually, although a lot of places set up a central authority, but there doesn't have to be a central authority for which version of the repository is correct. And so it's harder to just undo a thing once it's out in the wild and everyone can see it. But if it's only on your machine, you can back things out. Okay, so we have made some progress. So now, UI time. Okay. Or then we'll just review what else we might have already done. Okay. Cool. So we're going to add a UI to this buff window. And since the buff window starts to the very left, and I think that's good, and we should keep that, we're going to go ahead and add to the right here. Eventually we can update the background to have a place for it, and use the background with or without based on whether we're doing the thing. But for now, I'm just going to draw it over nothing. And let's see. We're going to come on into Buff window and start playing with that. Buff window draws all of its stuff in a function called start. It's kind of a two-phase approach. You construct the buff window and then you call start and then it makes itself. Not my favorite, but as long as we know that it does it that way. So in the start function is where we're going to be thinking about what is this going to look like. We've already seen in the melodic interlude window how to get skills into the window and make them clickable and all that. So we can pop open the melodic interlude window as inspiration. So we have quick shortcuts and we have quick slots. And we're going to use the shortcut to construct a skill shortcut, and it's going to have data for a specific skill. And that's a string of a hexadecimal number. Maybe an integer would work as well, but I'm going to go with hexadecimal because it works. And we have a design choice. There are 7 possible anthems, and so we have the option to create 7 of these and just pick which one is visible, or we could just create one of these and pop the data that's in there back and forth. I actually don't know which is going to be easier. The code for 7 of them would be annoying. Kind of. Maybe? Maybe not. But it feels wasteful, right? It feels wasteful to make 7 shortcuts and 7 quick slots, given that I only want one of them to be visible at a time. My only worry is that there could be some edge case about shoving different data in there that come back to bite us. But I think it's the right choice if the API supports it. So we're going to go with a single shortcut and a single quick slot, and we change the data in that shortcut depending on which anthem we want to be in there. So let's go ahead and just borrow that code on how to do that, and come on down to the bottom of this function. We have the anthem time. Okay. So we're going to make a new section, anthem priority display. And we have this code that we're hoisting. So we're going to have anthem priority shortcut. And that's going to be a turbine.ui.lotro.shortcut. And what on earth is this? Awesome. And we need the data to put in there. Now, right now we don't have the logic to know what is going in there. Yeah, I feel like that's fine. So let's start with just creating these things. So let's come on into, say settings. Seems like a place to put it. Skill IDs equals, and we're going to actually do something very similar. So it needs to look like this. We're going to steal from over here. And instead, so we do want to go ahead and do quotes here. So we're just going to do a little multi-edit. But the actual thing that's in here needs to be different from the icon. So we're going to come in with the skill IDs instead. But that's what it's going to look like, is thing equals quote hex value. Okay, well, let me just grab my handy dandy reference. And we have lesser anthem 1. And that is skill ID this. Then real quickly, lesser anthem 2 is skill ID that. And lesser anthem 3. Of course, I put that in the wrong place. I just realized that I have some typos in these names. Anthem 1, that should be Anthem 3, Lesser Composure, and my goodness, is that embarrassing. So let's go ahead and do a quick little fix there. that was an obvious copy paste error. So we're gonna go ahead and just fix that. And do a separate commit to capture that change. My goodness. Well, we try not to make that kind of mistake, but it does creep in. Okay, so what we're going to do is do a refresh here. Now we're going to do a save all. Okay. Yeah, a copy C, copy V is a great tool, and you just sometimes it doesn't quite do. So fixed copy paste error of Anthem variable Anthem X variable names. Okay, so this is good. This is good, but we don't want that new addition of skill IDs down here. We're not ready for that. Minstrel effects, great. 2323. Yep. Same thing over in the English and same thing over in the German. We're going to go ahead and skip the priority display, and no, we'll just discard those two lines. Don't need those. Okay, so that was just the basic fix that we need just to fix that and nothing else. And when possible, I really do like extracting out just the changes necessary for a change like this. Don't commit that with a bunch of other things. It makes it way harder to decode later what was going on. Also, it's much easier to verify that this is correct when it's the only thing that's changing. If I had this and 20 other things, then I might know that it's correct, but I might not. And so we'll just go ahead and commit that by itself. Okay, but that means we can come on back in here now. And, oh, where were we? Nope, nope, and nope. And in the settings, yeah, we're going to go ahead and get those. Okay, so we need the greater anthems, greater anthem 1, compassion, great. Greater anthem 2, war, and greater anthem 3. What is it good for? No, prowess. Okay, we also want the anthem of the free people. Free peoples. Right. All right, you've got me curious. Free peoples in here. Anthem of the free peoples. Great. Okay. Anthem of the free peoples. Now, my data might have more than one anthem of the free peoples. So there is a question, or that, of which one it is. So we'll do some playing around with that. But it's going to be one of those. So now we just do the same thing we did before. Lord Zach asks, why are those hex values in string? The short answer is because that's how it works. If you pass, if you say it's a shortcut and you are making a shortcut of a skill and you pass in an integer hex value, it doesn't work. But if you pass it in as a string, it does work. And so the more general answer is that when you're creating a shortcut, you can create a shortcut to a number of different things. So that's a Turbine UI LOTRO shortcut. And so when you are doing this shortcut type, that can be an alias or hobby or item or pet or a skill. And specifically items, the string that contains information for items, I believe can be multi-part that indicates things like the specific stack of the item and the item type, and dealing with more complications than just a skill. And so you're getting a string that contains possibly multiple chunks of information, and Yeah, the shortcut is not a hobbit, it's a hobby. Absolutely. And so, in order to simplify, like I personally am not a fan of interfaces that are like, this parameter can either be an integer, in which case it means how many seconds since midnight, or it can be a string, in which case it's the name of your favorite cat. It's like, that's not a very good API. That should be two separate functions or something. And so the fact that they're just taking a string regardless, I think is fine. And in this case, they know for a skill, there should be a hex value in there, they parse it out, whatever. Slightly less efficient than just passing the hex value, but it makes for a more unified API. I'm fine with it. So I don't have a lot of shortcut experience, but that's what I believe to be true about the shortcut, is that it is supporting numerous types of data and they all come in as a string. But great question. Why are we passing hex numbers as strings? Because that's how it works. So we're going to come into the calculator and just do the exact same thing that we did before. In decimal mode, we copy the thing in. Oops. And then hex mode, we copy the thing back out. And because these are all skills, we're expecting to see some similarities. We can see, for instance, that they all start with 7-0. That's actually a really good sign that these numbers are correct when they all look the same when they come out. Sometimes it's a little hard to see with decimal numbers whether things are clumping together. All right, I want to go with the later one. On this one, just to try it out. They are very similar, though. I'm going to go ahead and just document which one's which, just in case that matters. Oh, great. Agartha has put into chat an example of an item as shortcut. And as we can see, it's much more complicated looking than just a single hexadecimal 32-bit number. But it does contain multiple hexadecimals, comma separated. And I think you can play games with an item stack by passing 0 as one of those two, and then you get sort of a more generic item as a shortcut instead of the specific item stack. Maybe I'm well outside my comfort zone there, but I feel like I've heard people talking about that off in the Discord server or something. Oh, water glass is empty. New water glass. Okay. Cool. So we have some skill IDs that are ready to be passed into shortcuts based on the names that we're using. And again, we're indexing these things with strings. Not a fan of that, but we can fix that in post, as they say. So let's go ahead and just do a skill ID of, we'll start with just Anthem 1 Lesser Resonance as a default. And so local default skill equals Anthem 1 greater resonance, but that needs to be part of skill ID. Cool. And we're going to go ahead and, in fact, I'll call it default priority skill for some consistent naming. Okay. Interesting. Zach says there was a plugin to switch gear sets, but it was using item names, and sometimes wasn't equipping the right item if you have the same name but different stats. Yeah, I use Prime bags for my inventory, and I've mucked about with the code, and so it's not up to date because I fear an update will wipe out all the stuff I've played around with. But it too, the version I have, if you have two different items of the same name, it kind of conflates the two. So if I say, for instance, Potent Resolute Shield of Penetration is part of my DPS set, and another one of those drops with the same name, it can't tell them apart. It's just like, yep, that's part of your DPS set, and it's fine as long as you know it's a problem. Then you'll just get that. Whenever I had mucked about with the code. Of course you did. I did. I have some really interesting thoughts on where I want the version of it from 6 months to a year ago to go. But then we bought a house and started doing Dutch classes, and so I haven't really had the free time. So that's like a January kind of thing. But if they're not already in there, renamable bags and explicit ordering of bags and all sorts of fun things. But they might already be in there. Okay. Neat. Yeah, Lord Zach, absolutely. Port deed tracker can't tell if we've completed a quest or deed. Yeah, I would very much enjoy an addition to the LOTRO API that allows us to be notified on quest or deed completion, or even on quest or deed progression. But since we don't have that, we're just looking at the quest channel where quests and deeds spit out their completion status, and just like, that looks like the name of a quest or deed. Sometimes it is. Fortunately, there's not a lot of overlap between quest names and deed names, but there are some, like the Eyes of the Enemy quest in the Trollshaws versus the Eyes of the Enemy deed in Moria. So, yeah, what are you gonna do? Now, if one wanted to do some very specific stuff, you can be like, okay, I think you're in Trollshaws. I'm just going to assume that was the Trollshaws one. You can be like, oh, you're less than level 45. It can't be the Moria one. Yeah, you could do some extra logic like that. But if you're just doing a name comparison, then you're kind of stuck. Okay, we have an Anthem priority shortcut. Awesome. And this is the shortcut we're going to be updating as we need. And this is the quick slot we're going to shove it into. And we're going to be able to need to change its visibility. So saving these both off in the self makes sense. Okay, so raise the spirit quick slot. We want to rename that just to something a little bit more. So Anthem priority quick slot. And set parent self.window. Set position. Oh, that's going to be a challenge. So we need this. This needs to come from the theme. Each theme needs to tell us whereabouts is this going to go. But we can cheat a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and find a good spot in this theme and hard code it for a minute. So let me go ahead and file open. Documents, Lord of the Rings Online. And so in this case, we're just coming into plugins, Cube plugins, MinstrelBuff II. This is in the resources, themes, theme on window, and we're just going to come look at the yeah, let's look at the 4 theme. Oh, cool. So what I was thinking was it would live in the void, as it were, right up here. And so maybe update the background to include something for it. And so we're looking for, how big is this? 28 by yeah, so that's going to need to be more like a 32 by 32. Okay, so great. So it's going to be that big, and it's going to be somewhere around here. And since we're just playing around with this, we can just move it right there and call it good. So we just need to know where this is. So that is 160 pixels over. Good enough. So, set position of 160, and that was at the top, so it's 0. And we're going to set the shortcut to Anthem priority shortcut, and set allow drop equals to false. Okay, so that's a good starting point. In order to see that, we're going to go ahead and come on into our plugin window, plugin manager, and unload and reload, and great. We can see right there we've got an Anthem. Only available during combat. That's excellent. Hang on a sec. Oh, kinship member's house. Let's go find a training dummy. Now, I don't actually have this skill, but it looks like the logic that they have is first, are you in combat? And second, do you have the skill? So we're gonna take a look at that. If you happen to be on Treebeard, the Whitwich neighborhood has a couple of ingredient crates. And up in the northeast corner here on Chalk Road, we have a kinship house with all of the crafting stations and also a training dummy. So, lovely place to spend an afternoon.
And all the trick-or-treats.
Oh yes, and all the trick-or-treat mats. There's just a route of 8 houses here along Pleasant Street in Myrtle Court. You can get all 8 of your various trick-or-treat things, although I did that all last year, so haven't really done anything about that this year. Okay, we can see that's nicely placed in the void. And now that I'm in combat, I can click it. That skill cannot be used. That's great. But what we can do is come back into this, and instead of starting Anthem 1 Lesser Resonance, let's go ahead and do one we do have, Anthem 2 Lesser Dissonance. So that's the default one. We're going to go ahead and load this back up. Awesome. And now, Lesser Anthem 2 Dissonance. Now, it is disabled, not because we're not in combat, but because we don't have enough ballads stacked up. We need at least one ballad stacked up. This is a shortcut, so it immediately became available. Awesome. Do the thing, click on the thing, and we have the cooldown. This is where in my ideal world, it would switch to the next thing in the list. But we've got something displaying on the screen that's already exciting. While we're thinking about things, knowing how long the cooldown is would also be pretty neat. And I don't know how to do that, but I think maybe it's possible. So if we come into turbine.gameplay, we have skills. Get skill info. Let's see. Skill list. So that returns a skill. Okay. Which could be an active skill, untrained skill. Cool. What's an active skill? Get base cooldown, get cooldown. Well, that sounds fun. So one thing I would like to be able to do is get the skills of the player that are the anthems that we care about, so we can keep an eye on things like their cooldowns. Do we have any events? Reset time changed. That sounds great. Let's see, so skill list, which I believe you can get from the local player. Skill info, get description, get icon, image ID, get name, get type. Awesome. We definitely have some options here. Get price, delightful. Back when those required a price. So if we have a local player, is there a get skills? Get trained skills? There is a get trained skills from the local player. Awesome. New question. Do we have a local player in MinstrelBuff? D-Tracker, no. All right, I would very much like to constrain my searching to just this solution, or just this project. All right. MinstrelBuff, great. So we do. We have a local player. We also have the effects list. So we're going to need to be aware of how to change this, but we can get the list of skills. Awesome. MinstrelBuff already has an idea of trait change or stance changing. Stance. So Minstrel stance changed callback. So that is a thing to think about. If we come in here and just do a turbine.shell.writeLine, we can go ahead and see when this is getting called. So if we come in and if I change actual stances, we see a Minstrel stance changed. But I believe as a side effect of how things work, if I change to a different trait configuration, it also gets called. So I believe MinstrelBuff is using that to know when we change traits. And so if we can performantly get that list of skills and check what's going on, that would be neat. I'm just kind of waiting for that other trait to come back. I guess I could do something else. Okay, so we want to get the trained skills, and that's going to be a skill list. Okay, let's do that. So first of all, update the list of trained skills. Ideally, let's add a note. Note, we'd prefer to do this only when changing trait trees. Can we tell that? Question mark. And the answer is maybe. Actually, we'd ideally only do this when an anthem becomes available or not available. And maybe there's a more targeted way we can do this. Let's hold off on this. Pausing. Let's come back in to where we're looking at local player. Okay, so skill, trained skill. We have a trained skills. Awesome. Where are we looking at that? Show window. Okay. Where else are we looking at that? Because that feels incomplete. Soliloquy tracker window. No. Fascinating. Okay, so we definitely are already getting at trained skills. We'd probably want to isolate this to a single spot so we don't have like 7 parts of the code all looking at the trained skills to try to figure something out, especially if the skills are changing. But local trained skills equals, and let's just let's play around with this. Get trained skills, we think, is going to, I don't know, where's that IntelliSense? Return a skill list. Awesome. And so we know a skill list has an entry over here, and we have a get count and a get item. So we can iterate through that. Local trained skill count equals trained skills get count. And we can do a for I equals 1 to trained skill count. Let's see, we need an increment and a do. Okay. And then we can do something with this. So local skill equals trained skills, get item, and then that is I. So now we have a skill, probably. I wonder if this IntelliSense is a little bit slow because of all the stuff like deed tracker in the background that it has to think about. I have to think about single plugin versions of this. Okay. Skill list get item. Great, returns a skill. So we named it correctly. We have a skill. And in that, we can get a skill info. Local skill info equals skill get skill info. Okay, now we have a skill info. What are we going to do with that? We have a description, icon, image ID, name, and type. Type is interesting. What on earth is a type of a skill? Oh, I think I know, actually. But what I want to know is the name. So local skill name equals skill info get name. And this feels like a very convoluted thing to do, but the people who were making this API were trying to support, I think, both Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons and Dragons Online, and maybe this was a way for them to be a little bit generic in order to support all types of skills from possibly multiple properties. Okay, so we have a skill name, turbine.skill.shell.writeLine, and we're going to go ahead and just pop out that skill name. Okay, let's go ahead and unload and reload and see what we get. We get a bunch of skills, not surprisingly. But specifically, what we would like is, in maybe settings, is Anthem trained. We want to have an array, and this is just going to be an in-memory array, and we're not going to save it out. But for each one of these, we want to have a value, true or false. So assume that we have no anthems to begin with. And then if the anthem is trained, then we can go ahead and mark it as true, and we can use that in our logic for do we care about it. Okay. So what we really want is if is Anthem trained, we want to check if the table has that key. And there's a way to do that. Lua, check if table has key. Awesome. Stack Overflow, enlighten me. No, I want to... Really? Why are people not just giving me what I want? Table dot. Really? Lua table functions. There's a way to insert a thing. Why is there not a way to get the thing? I feel like there is. I'll have to look into that. Okay. In the meantime, maybe we'll just check if it's null. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it. So if is Anthem trained of skill name does not equal nil, then there we go. End. Okay. So we want to go ahead and say is Anthem trained of skill name equals true. And then we can go ahead and elaborate this. Found an Anthem. And concatenate that skill name. And then another quote, just so we can see the full name with any possible white space. All right, cool. Found an Anthem. Anthem of the Free Peoples. That seems wrong. More importantly, it only found one of them, which I think is very funny. Oh, of course. Of course. That's delightful because so far all we've cared about are the names of the effects of anthems, and the effect names and the anthem names have not matched. So we need, in addition to valid anthem effects, we need valid anthem names. Valid anthem skill names. Of course we do. Needed for the anthem priority system. And so we're not going to bother with war mount anthems at the moment. Okay, so we have anthem effect names, and we have anthem skill names. And for propriety, ideally these would be Anthem one lesser resonance effect, right? Effect would be in the name. And I think we should do that later. So we're going to come on in here and let's go ahead and close some of these things. And just as a, put it down here on the bottom, change variables names like that to include effect, like effect. Great. Out of my head. Gone. So in the meantime, we'll just retroactively put skill over here. So Anthem 1 lesser resonance skill equals, and then something, right? And we're going to do the same thing for all of these. So let's go ahead and copy those names, paste them on in, but go ahead and put skill at the end. In fact, we can go ahead and also equals empty quote, just multi-edit that. Okay, so we have the skill names, and it just turns out that Anthem of the Free Peoples has the same skill as effect. Very handy. But in the meantime, we can come in and see we have lesser anthem, resonance, we have lesser anthem 3, composure, And that gives us a pattern that we're going to be able to use. Well, that's interesting. Greater Anthem 3 prowess. But I don't have that. I do have that. Oh, I'm still in that other stance. Great. Compassion. Great. Let's get Greater Anthem 1 Compassion in here. And we can go ahead and switch on back to the other stance. Unload, reload. Well, that's interesting. Right, of course. We still need those skill names to spit out until we can correctly isolate the anthems. Okay, so we have the Lesser Anthem 2, Dissonance. Lesser Anthem 2, Dissonance. And the Greater Anthem 2, War. When possible, I like to copy paste these things instead of just typing them. You avoid little subtleties like them having accidentally used an M dash instead of an N dash, and you just have the wrong dash typed in, and then your exact character matching check doesn't work. So when possible, just copy paste from the game itself. Even if you think you can type it precisely, you never know when a little mistake like that creeps in, as it has in, I think, German and French. Maybe just German. One of them is using an M dash instead of an N dash, or vice versa, and the dash is just slightly bigger and slightly not matchable by the other dash. Okay, so we have Anthem skill names, and then we just need to go ahead and have these in our valid Anthem skill names table. And we're going to go ahead and have those be keys, and we'll just go ahead and set that to true for now. And then if the Anthem name is in this table, not nil, and then we know it's a valid Anthem skill name. And we can do the same thing that we were trying to do before. So coming out into main, if not is Anthem trained. Oh, sorry. Skill name is Anthem trained. Oh, yes. Do we need an array for this? That's a good question. Hang on. We may not need an independent table because over here, these are the values we wanted to use. This might not need to be there. We'll comment that out to represent that we're not sure about that quite yet. Okay, so comment out the use of all the skills, unload, reload, bam, found an Anthem, Lesser Anthem, Composure, Greater Anthem 2, War. That's cool, except for why didn't we also find the Lesser Anthem 2, Dissonance? Feels like that should have been in there. Let's come take a look. Lesser Anthem 2. Okay, that's in there. And then that should be here. Oops. So we have Resonance, we have Lesser 2 Dissonance, we have those. Well, that's fascinating. It's always interesting when things are a little off like that. I heard the sound of a laughing hobbit. Was that in-game? I think it was in-game. Who can say? Oh, no, it's a donation. Awesome. Well, Marcy Brown, I don't know if you are watching the stream, but if you are, thank you so much for your donation to Extra Life. We're going to one-up a little redhead and do both a flip and a spin. So, if you're watching, awesome. Thank you so much for supporting children's hospitals. And if you're not watching, well, thank you in absentia. Okay. So what's going on here? we are expecting that skill name to match one of the keys here in is Anthem trained. We've got the lesser dissonance skill, should be lesser 2 dissonance, it is, but we're not seeing it. And so, is Anthem trained? Skill name, and oh my goodness, the 2022 amount raised is being listed as 14,096 out of a goal of 20,000. We haven't even hit the game day, which is, I believe, is Friday, November 4th. That's incredible. This community is great. Okay, what's going on? So let's go ahead and see if is this there. Let's instead have an else branch that says, okay, it wasn't there, and we can spit out turbine.shell.writeLine didn't find a match for, and let's again put quotes around it. We're just doing skill name. Oh, I hear another. Oh, someone is probably streaming with.
I was looking, I'm not finding, but maybe.
Well, maybe someone's streaming, but Val D. Perkins, thank you so much for your donation, perhaps in absentia. Your donation towards children's hospitals. I think the Hobbit flip is adorable, and I like doing it any chance I get. But the spin is also pretty great. Awesome. Okay, so we didn't find a match for skill name. And so we're going to come on in and into our plugin manager, unload and reload, and say, what's going on? Didn't find a match for. Cool, we can, you know what? There's a lot of similarities here. Oh, goodness. This is why one of my favorite techniques for digging into pattern matching issues is to put quotes on it. Because as we can see, didn't find a match for quote, lesser Anthem 2 space dash space dissonance space. And because I didn't have those quotes before, I didn't realize, and I'm going to put this into my, maybe let them know, skill name, quote, lesser Anthem 2 dissonance space shouldn't have a trailing space, perhaps. You never know. But it does make me wonder, should I have realized that? It is weird. Okay. That's wild, but we can adapt to that. Until that gets changed, we can come on in here into our Minstrel Effects EN and just say, okay, there's a space there. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. So now we can say found an Anthem, lesser Anthem 2 distance, composure, and so on. Okay. Does make me wonder. I guess we found the other ones, so that's okay. So let's come on back into the main window. Stop announcing that we didn't find a match. Come on back in. Great, we found lesser Anthem 2, lesser Anthem 3, and greater Anthem 2. Perfect. Let's switch on over to the other trait tree and see if that matches there as well. Okay, and for that, we're going to go ahead and unload and reload, and found an Anthem, lesser 1, greater 1, lesser 3, greater 3, Anthem of the Free Peoples. Great. So we have the ability to detect which of our anthems are getting populated. And we have a not great way of telling that our stance has switched, so that tells us that we should rescan. And so there might be some better ways to do it, but that's a good start. Now, it might be interesting to save off these skills. But before we start thinking about that, what did we have? Or skill infos, I guess I should say. What was it? We were saying active skills. An active skill is what? Is that a skill? It is a skill. So if this is an active skill, it should also have these things. Base cooldown, reset time changed. And I think that would be very interesting to poke around with. So, because we got this out of a trained skills, maybe we can assume that they are active skills. What were the other options? Untrained skills. Makes you think active skills maybe should have been trained skills. And gambit skills. That's fascinating. I'm not a warden, so I'm going to ignore that. No, I'm not. I'm a sucker. No obvious difference there. Okay. So we have what is probably an active skill, which means, I wonder if I can do like a casting kind of thing. Okay. Local active skill equals active skill of skill. Does that do anything? Well, that helps the... You don't like that syntax, do you? I think that's not the syntax to do a cast. No. I wonder if we can do that in Lua. Cast. Cast object to subclass. Because the subclasses are kind of tacked on, I think the answer is not going to be found there, but we might be able to find it in the turbine class file. Let's go ahead and pull that up. Just to say we have Isa. Nice. And let's see, I don't care about that. Abstract, final class, static class is I very much like a cast for the purpose of this, and we can do that with some annotations. And I think that might be the way to do, since this is just a IntelliSense thing. So if we have a function here, let's come in and take a look at how to do the annotations. This poor extension. Okay, cool. So that's a way to do this. So if we go ahead and say function get active skill, and we know that's going to return a... I do believe I closed my API reference. We know that's going to go ahead and return an active skill. Awesome. So that is an active skill. Then we can just return skill. And the IntelliSense will read this and say, oh, from get active skill, you have an active skill. Awesome. And we can just go ahead and say get active skill to IntelliSense our way into skill being an active skill. And at that point, we can use IntelliSense to get access to those other things, probably. Cool, awesome. We have our reset time changed, which is specifically something I wanted. But we also have get cooldown, get base cooldown. Cool. So let's play around with that a little bit. So we have local base. What do we even have? Let's get this up here. All right, cat, you use that toy. All right, so we have a base cooldown equals skill get base cooldown. We have local cooldown equals skill get cooldown. We have local reset time equals, what are you? Just a number, All right, skill get reset time, and is usable, sure. Is usable equals toString of skill get usable. Oh, interesting. Is usable. is usable. And then we can just spit that out. Turbine.shell.writeLine, and then just concatenate that all together. If you have a string format sense, that's probably a faster way to get this done. But I'm just going to do some manual concatenation. Base cooldown, base cooldown, and then we have cooldown, and then cooldown. We have reset time, and is usable. Cool. So just a little basic information about that. Fascinating. So we come out with a base cooldown of -1, a cooldown of 25, reset time of -1, is usable, false. All of that makes sense because we're not in combat and we don't have enough ballads. So I'm going to actually get into combat and then get my ballads, unload and reload this just to see what happens. Okay, so now we have, again, reset times, yes, is usable. We have a bunch of trues. Which makes sense, yes. This one in the UI isn't because that's from our other stance. But the other question is, let's go ahead and use one, and then unload and reload. And so now we get reset times. All of them have the same reset time. All of them still have a base cooldown of -1 and a cooldown of 25, which makes sense. And a reset time of presumably when this thing resets. Okay, that's really good information because that tells us we can natively know what the cooldown is for our anthems. It should always be the same for all your anthems, but it can change based on your traits and possibly legendary items. And so that's good information. And then what I really want, I'll tell you what I want. What I really want is, let's make a function for function handle reset anthem reset time changed, and that's probably going to take a sender and some args. It does sender args and turbine shell dot writeLine. And what I think would be funny is I suspect now every single one of them would activate an anthem or reset time changed when their time cools down. So we want to be careful not to get like 4 of these all going at once. But what I do want to do is come on in here and say skill dot reset time changed equals anthem reset time changed. Just go ahead and call that function. And we'll go ahead, we've reloaded it. We're going to come ahead and use an anthem. Oh, the reset time changed then. That's interesting. I wasn't sure what I was going to see. So when Anthem goes into cooldown, Anthem reset time changed is called. And not when it becomes available. But we can check to see if it's becoming available. So anytime an Anthem is used, we can be made aware of this, and we can act accordingly. Interesting. Okay, should probably document some of the things I've just discovered because we are coming up on the end of the stream here, and I'm going to forget everything about this before next week if I'm not careful. Okay, so using the active skill projection of a skill, we can see the what do we call it? Cooldown, default 25 seconds. Let's make a new line here. The cooldown, default 25 seconds. The cooldown, what is that? The reset time. When the cooldown will expire. Or what was it? Reset time is -1. Okay. Cooldown. The total cooldown time. Reset time. When the cooldown will expire. In game time. Or -1. If no cooldown. Okay. Active. Okay, that's a thing we've learned. What else did we learn? Active skill. All reset time changed. All active anthems fire this. Maybe all anthems. All anthems fire this at the same time. So we only really need to pay attention once. That would be a very easy thing to do, is do the calculation 4 times. Or whatnot. Okay. Is usable. Seems correct. Okay, we can use is usable. Is usable. Reflects if you could click the skill. Well, activate the skill. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. Anything else? Get base cooldown. Get base cooldown seems to always be -1. Ignore it. I'm curious if that comes into play when you actually do change the cooldown. Are we spec'd that way? Anthem. Where are those things? Okay. Every once in a while I think maybe it'd be cool to have a third one of these. And then I look at 100 mythril coins and I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm guessing if I had invigorating anthems, that the base cooldown would then be 25 and the cooldown would be 24. Base cooldown seems was always -1, probably populated when cooldown is different than default. It's my hypothesis right now. It's just a guess. Just a guess. I'll even document that. Okay, so you know, it's funny. Travel Window 2 has, on my computer, a noticeable delay on startup. And I assumed that was from scanning through every skill. And maybe it is. But I'm not noticing the same delay here, and we're scanning through every skill. And I'm wondering if there's some subtlety that I'm missing related to that. Also, I can't help but notice, but there's... Oh, I've turned my frame rate on. That's clever. I wonder how I did that.
Control F.
Control F, I'm being told. Yeah, cool. Apparently my frame rate is 220 frames per second, which just seems excessive. I don't actually think my human eye can, squishy as it is, can register that many changes. But cool. Okay. I think this is a really good progress into what some of the things are that we can pay attention to. So anytime we need, we can see how much reset time is left in an anthem. We could probably cache off an anthem to just query when we want to query. We don't need to find these every time. We can probably make use of that in our logic based on how much time is left on the anthems that we care about. Should they be included or excluded from the Anthem priority list. So that's really excellent research. If Anthem cooldown time is detectable, it is see above. So start setting at 25 up to first time Anthem. Yeah, Anthem. We can just say Anthem cooldown time is detectable. See above. And then add an option. We don't need to add an option. That's great. Okay. Anthem time is respectable. Yeah, it shows the next item in your priority queue. Remember to do +2 for how much time is left calculation. And the cooldown time is detectable. Awesome. Oh, I don't know for sure, but I feel like we could have broad strokes of this done next time, and then just need to do some edge cases. One thing I'm curious about is, how do we tell if a skill becomes active? Like, if I come in here and switch over, I did not receive any sort of a reset time changed, which makes sense because the reset time did not change. I do have this this is a new skill icon. Oh, that's kind of cool. I'll probably keep playing with this icon here. Like, sometimes I hide things, but I'll probably keep playing with that because that's a really nice reminder that your Anthem can do something. And that's the Anthem I want in Redline 99% of the time. So I'll probably just leave that there instead of hiding my work for the week. Okay, I think that's really interesting. This might take a couple more weeks to really finalize, but then again, class ends on tomorrow, so maybe I'll have time this weekend. We'll see. But we're going to make use of the logic of which things you want to see. Do you have those effects? And will those effects end in less than your cooldown time plus a second or two? And if so, they don't count. Like, if you need to re-up them. And I think that logic is going to require a lot of comments to convince ourselves that we have it correct. Always a great thing to add some comments. But I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to go through the list of priority and say, do we have this effect? And does it have more than cooldown time plus n seconds? And then we just need to have a sensible way to do this calculation, because I don't want to do it on every update frame. So we're probably going to make use of the wants updates and the update function, but we're probably going to want to put some code in there that says, have we done this in the last second? And if so, just return. So we save off the time code that we do this on. Has it been at least 1,000 milliseconds since then? Great. Or I can't remember if the game stamp is in, it must be in seconds. So has it been at least 1 second since the last time? If not, return. Number comparisons are pretty fast. And then we can, once a second, roughly, call off the function that actually does this logic. And then we can feel like, okay, this is helpful, but it's not consuming a lot of effort every update cycle. Because it doesn't need to update that fast. Maybe half a second, be generous. Okay. Every 500 seconds, call function to recheck priority, Anthem priority queue. Cool. Oh man, I am really pumped to see this come to fruition. So we're gonna go ahead and bring this stream to a close. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, let's get them into chat real fast or save them until next week. I'm super thrilled at a couple of donations coming in during the stream for the Standing Stone Games team. That's super awesome. Look at that amount. 14,000 and some change. Hey, stop attacking me, dummy. 14,000 and some change donated for children's hospitals. That's so cool. In fact, I'll just do another little flip here in this Hobbit house as soon as the Hobbit house has loaded. Oh yeah. Wow. That's how enthusiastic I am about plugins and about donations for children's hospitals. Alright, take a drink here, see if anyone has any last minute things. Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming into chat. I think this was very cool. Lots of fun progress here. We got to do a speed run through the Haunted Burrow. We got to take our UI, add a shortcut with an Anthem, and we're going to next week start changing that Anthem round based off of our state. It's going to be really exciting. Even more so than today was. Let's see. Where are my notes? Where is my screaming cat? What's up? Where are you?
It's under the table.
Okay. Awesome. Cat has screamed. Plugins are working. Burrow has been haunted. All right. That is all we are going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right. Bye-bye now.